I have the great good fortune to be sitting, as it were, through Zoom with Jules Evans. Jules is in Costa Rica. I'm in Vermont. And Jules has stepped up and said he's very open to talking about his spiritual awakening process. So I feel very fortunate to be sitting with you today, Jules. And maybe you could introduce yourself to the audience in terms of how you've been participating in this whole zone of spiritual emergency professionally, and then we'll go more into your personal story.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. It's very nice to meet you finally and to be here talking with you. I think of myself primarily as a writer. I've been a journalist. I've written books looking at the kind of history and present manifestations of spirituality, mental health, philosophy, and how they all intersect with culture. I co-edited the book Breaking Open, Finding a Way Through Spiritual Emergency, as well as other books like The Art of Losing Control, subtitles A Philosopher's Search for Ecstatic Experiences, um, a book called Philosophy of Life and Other Dangerous Situations, which is about how ancient Greek philosophy helped me out of a kind of extended crisis. I now edit a Substack called Ecstatic Integration, which is kind of interested in what it what it sounds like, how we as Western, as modern cultures reintegrate ecstatic experiences wisely and relatively safely. And I set up in 2022 an NGO called the Challenging Psychedelic Experiences Project to learn more about post-psychedelic difficulties and what helps people recover from them.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, in order to be being so prolific in your professional work, my guess is that obviously there's been something on a personal level that has really inspired you to do this kind of work. So, I would love to hear from you, and I'm sure our audience would too, just when you felt your spiritual awakening process started, how old you were,
Yeah.
and some of the high points and low points, as well as your
Yeah, sure.
resolution.
I would say it was when I was a teenager. I was at a kind of English boarding school, the same school where Aldous Huxley, by the by, was a pupil and then a teacher. And through his books and other books that I came across, I was drawn to mysticism and to kind of world religions, perennial philosophy. I mean, I have the school, I still have the school's copy of the perennial philosophy by Aldous Huxley and also to psychedelics. I was doing psychedelics. I started, experimenting with them young at about 14. I think I first tried LSD. First tried magic mushrooms in a field in Gloucestershire when I was about 15 or 16 and was having powerful mystical experiences through those psychedelic experiences really, um, which were a little bit beyond my ability to understand them, but they were amazing. And I was drawn to, like, I remember Taoism, Buddhism. I declined to get confirmed as a Christian and told my godmother, I'm a Buddhist. That was about 15 or 16, which I think was being a bit provocative rather than true. But I was drawn to this. I was drawn to it, right from the start, and I don't know why. I mean, I come from a Quaker family on one side of my family, and I had a an ancestor who John Wilhelm Rowntree is from the Rowntree family, and he wrote a book about ecstatic experiences in the early 20th century. So there's maybe something in the family ancestry drawn to non-denominational explorations of mystical experience. Um, and then, oh, that was all lovely in my teen years and lots of fun and very hedonistic as well, I should say. I was also kind of going to nightclubs, raving, so there was that aspect to it. But in the last kind of couple of years of school, I was smoking dope every day. I was, you know, uh, doing too many drugs, I would say, mixing them in together, trying to, like a rite of passage without any elder guidance that kind of kept on going, pushing limits. And I had a couple of bad psychedelic experiences. One which left me at school, which left me kind of a bit wounded for a while, but I brushed it off. And then another after school, where during this basically bad trip, I really thought, you've done it now. You've damaged yourself permanently, which is,
Mm.
I now know, a very common belief among people who have bad trips and post psychedelic difficulties,
Yes.
as well as bad meditation experiences. They come out of it and they think, I've permanently damaged my brain. I've done it now. I'm broken. And basically, through university, I developed what I now know were the symptoms of PTSD. And it was very frightening time. I didn't know what was going on. I felt my personality had changed in unwanted ways. I had nightmares, dissociation and derealization. It was really, we're trying to kind of be a young adult at the same time and figure out who I am in the world, and do a degree at Oxford at the same time. I was doing a degree in English literature. I got through that, but really I was fine in the world of books, but I was more and more messed up interpersonally. Um, and then I kind of had a mini breakdown after leaving university because I was like, what am I going to do? My only plan was be a novelist or poet, and I didn't really have a B plan, and I wasn't a very good novelist or poet. Um, I went to work as a business journalist, and I had bad social anxiety at that point. And then I basically had, the incredible good fortune of having a near-death experience.
Mm.
I felt stuck. I felt desperate. I had this bad PTSD. I felt broken. And when I think it was about 24, Emma, I went to Norway, as we do every year, to go skiing. I got
Ah,
Norwegian family.
ah,
We have this family hutte in somewhere called the Peer Gynt Valley,
yes.
where the myth of Peer Gynt comes from. And on this particular family holiday, on the first day, I skied off the side of the mountain and fell, I don't know how far, maybe 30 feet, and broke my leg very badly. And immediately upon impact, I had a white light experience.
Mm.
And this must all have been in about 2 minutes, but I felt immersed in a white light. I felt filled with love. I felt this deep knowledge that I wasn't broken, I was fine, and that what was causing my suffering was my beliefs. So this was all kind of transmitted to me, and I was like, "Oh, great!" And also that there was something in me that couldn't be broken,
Mm.
like something like a soul, like immortal soul. That's what it felt like.
Mm.
But the affect was just love, and everything's okay, everything's fine. And then I came back to my body, and I immediately knew I've been in a skiing accident, and I thought, what's the worst case? I could be paralyzed, and I tried to move my toes, and I could, and then I knew, okay, I'm not paralyzed, and I'm going to be fine. And I've had this incredible experience, and I've been liberated from this prison I was in, mental prison, for
Yes.
several years, and I felt so relieved and so lucky and grateful.
Mm.
My uncle skied up, and I heard him say, "Oh my God." And I tried to say to him, "Everything's fine, don't worry." But it came out as gobbledygook. And I don't know if that was because I banged my head or because it was some kind of speaking in tongues thing. But
Oh,
I remember, couldn't speak. And, they took me down to on a ski sledge, on
yes.
in a,
Yes.
on a board, put me in a hut waiting for a helicopter. My father came in. He was horrified because the bone was coming out of my leg.
Oh,
I'd lost 7 pints of blood, and I was like, I was just ecstatic. I was like, "Hey, there you are," because I just felt so filled with love, and relief, and I was high and felt completely regenerated, but only for about 2 months. And then the old habits of anxiety kind of came back a bit. And I recognized that this ecstatic state wasn't enough. I needed some practice.
Mm.
to turn it into kind of, altered state into altered traits.
Hmm.
So I got into cognitive therapy and Stoic philosophy
Oh.
as a kind of, that was my spiritual practice for years,
Mm.
to learn to trust the God within, as Epictetus calls it, and to, learn how to create good habits, wise habits of thinking and feeling and behaving. So look, that's it. That's what I'll stop there, Emma. But
Oh.
like basically in my 20s, I was part of this whole Stoic movement. I organized the
Oh.
first conference of Stoics when I was 30. And they now run every year. They're called Stoicon.
Oh.
I got, so I was part of that. So that was basically, I would say that NDE was this a mysterious, I don't pretend to understand it. It felt like incredible luck. Um, how strange that you have this incident of severe physical trauma, you knock yourself unconscious, and yet my experience was one of liberation, of wisdom transmission, of emotional healing. It's just bizarre. What is going on there? Still a mystery. And also the place, is that significant? Like it was on this mountain where I would like my ashes to be put, because I feel grateful to that mountain. Like
Oh.
there was it's called Valsfjell, and I believe it's the mountain from the Peer Gynt myth where he meets this the Mountain King, this spirit. So when I wrote about it, I called it In the Hall of the Mountain King, because I was like, is,
Oh.
is is it significant? That it
Yeah.
was in this place? I don't know.
Beautiful.
'Cause, yeah. Anyway, so I felt very lucky, and yeah, I mean, but I haven't ever had an experience like that again. I've had some spiritual experiences since, but I figure, well, I feel extremely lucky to have had that experience, and I hope it's helped me to help others, because otherwise, I don't know if it wasn't just for my benefit. Like it certainly inspired all the work I did on Stoicism. This idea, the heart of Stoicism is that your suffering is caused by your beliefs.
Uh-huh.
So that idea that I got from that experience is basically at the heart of this great ancient philosophy that I spent several years trying to popularize.
And would you say that your experience with a near-death experience actually shifted, excuse me, shifted you in terms of your sense of life purpose and life meaning?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Um, yeah. I mean, I was always quite drawn to spirituality and mysticism, and I was always drawn to writing.
Yes.
So, though I would love to say yes, Emma, that would be a neater story. The truth is that was all, but look, the experience of mental suffering completely transformed me. Like I was a very happy, um, cocky, arrogant
Oh.
young man.
Oh.
That's the truth. My life had been extremely easy up until 18, and those 5 years, yeah, I would say completely knocked the stuffing out of me,
Mm.
and it was very humiliating
Oh.
to my ego, and
Yeah.
so it was very humbling. It made me humble. It made me experience what it's like to feel like a complete outsider,
Oh.
like a scapegoat, all this kind of stuff. It was an extended experience of ego death, and that changed me for the rest of my life. Like I never became the kind of happy little kid that I was before that. It made me probably much more sensitive. Also, the whole thing made me interested in mental healing,
Yes.
in how the mind can make you extremely unwell, but
Mm.
also how you can escape from these mental prisons.
Hmm.
I'm There's a chance I wouldn't have had any interest in that
Mm.
unless I'd personally experienced mental hell for 4 to 5 years.
Uh-huh.
And I'm absolutely certain I wouldn't have started an NGO focused on post psychedelic difficulties, which is extremely niche area, and if I hadn't experienced it for 5 years myself
Yes.
when I was 18 to like 24. So, so actually thinking about it, yes, I suppose it did completely change my life.
Well,
Yeah.
you still have been the writer that you thought you would be
Yeah.
after you completed college, so that's completely consistent
Yeah. But
and
yeah,
and
I
still
think I'd have been a more mainstream journalist. I might have tried to be like an editor of a magazine
uh,
or something like that. That's
yes,
that's probably more likely rather than focusing on this quite niche area of like mental health, spirituality.
ecstasy as
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And as you write in one of the chapters in Breaking Open, you also had a ayahuasca experience, and
Yeah.
that was quite a bit later.
Yeah.
did you feel like there was a sense of incompletion? Like, wait a minute, I haven't had enough experiences, or I'm losing track of myself,
Yeah.
or what
Well, so
inspired you?
what happened was after I brought out my first book late, like when I was 35, so a long time, you know, I mean, later than most people write their first book, I guess. And that the first book was about ancient Greek philosophy and how it helped me and many others. But by the end of that book, I talked a bit about the near-death experience, and I said,
Mm,
look, Greek philosophy, Stoicism, is all about healing through ra rationality and self-control. But sometimes people get healed not through rationality and self-control, but through non-rational surrender,
mm,
these ecstatic states, like I was on this mountain. That wasn't, I mean, it fitted with rational philosophy, but the experience itself was not me sitting there figuring it out. It was an
yeah,
ecstatic experience.
yeah.
So I wrote this second book called The Art of Losing Control about ecstatic experiences.
Uh-huh.
What are they? How do we make sense of them? How do people find them? How are they good for us? How are they bad for us? That's when I first learned about spiritual emergencies,
Mm,
about the works of people like Stan Groff, William James, Aldous Huxley. Well, I knew Huxley a bit already, but um, there were chapters in that book on all the different ways people find ecstatic experiences, including psychedelics. That came out in 2017. By that point, there was this renaissance in research into psychedelics. And I was very curious about that. And I was like, wow, they're doing it differently to how I did when I was 15. They're doing it with set and setting, with guides. Maybe with all this proper care, I could go back and have psychedelic experiences again. And
ah,
maybe they could, because I'd had plenty of good ones, maybe they could be healing for me in a way that
mm,
a deeper way than cognitive therapy or stoicism could be.
yes.
Because, I still, it took me so long to heal. Like, I didn't have a relationship in my 20s, I wasn't capable of it.
Mm,
And in my 30s, I was still kind of, uh, you know, trying to open up, trying to also be capable of a romantic relationship, like try to get married. And yeah, basically trying to open my heart and thinking, I know I'll blow the doors off it with ecstatic experiences. That'll work, right? So so that was what my second book was like, looking for all these ecstatic experiences. And I was like, I really wanted to try psychedelics again, but I also thought there is a possibility I'll have another very bad trip and lose my mind. And so I thought, what I'll do is I'll do the book tour first, and then I'll try psychedelics. So in case I lose my mind, I won't have to do kind of a book tour when I in a psychotic state. So after the book came out, I went to, this is really dumb. I thought, how should I try psychedelics again 20 years after an extremely bad trip left me with PTSD? I know, I'll go to the Amazon jungle and do 5 ceremonies of ayahuasca. So that was, you know, only an Oxford educated writer could be so stupid as to kind of pick that. And so that's what I did. I went to the Amazon jungle. I signed up for a 10-day ayahuasca retreat, 5 ceremonies. Um, that was the first time I'd done psychedelics in 20 years. And very powerful, the most powerful psychedelic, probably, arguably one of them anyway. And I think on the second experience, the second ceremony, I went completely out of my body. I forgot my name, um, forgot I was a human for a while, and came back. I was like, oh yeah, I took ayahuasca. So dissociating heavily. That's a warning sign. That happens to you, that's a warning sign, I'd say. But actually, the experience was, the retreat was kind of fine. But then what happened was afterwards, I went to the Galapagos Islands to integrate the experience. And on the 3 flights to the Galapagos Islands, I became highly dissociated. So dissociated, I thought, I'm not in reality.
Mm,
I'm in a dream.
mm.
So this, extreme quasi-psychotic derealization. And everything that happened to me seemed to confirm that I didn't know. I was like, am I in a dream? Because every time was going so slowly, weird things were happening, and my mind was trying to figure it out. Like, is this real? This doesn't seem real. I now have heard other stories like this, but at the time I was like, and what amazes me is I didn't think, no, you've just done psychedelics for 10 days. Of course this is real. You're just, this is, but I didn't know that. And so weird things would happen to me, like I'd be walking through the Galapagos in this derealized state, and I'd see a sign saying, Galapagos, your dream holiday. And I was like, oh, it's a dream. And then I was in a hotel, and I looked out of my balcony, and there was a seal on the lilo. There was this kind of stuff. And I was like, and they're making a noise, sounding like they're being sick on ayahuasca. So there are all these things
Oh,
like, this is a dream. Um, so I told a friend of mine, and I said on a text, I said, I think I'm in a dream. And she said, I think you better come home, Jules. You don't sound well. So I did. I thought I was in a dream all the way back, I because I thought I was in a dream on the plane, I upgraded to first class because I was like, well, this is a dream. This isn't a real credit card. So I was lucky. I could have been arrested.
yeah.
Like if I acted a little weird,
Yes.
if I got a bit freaked out,
Yeah.
I'd have been arrested
Yes.
and I could have been sectioned in Peru
Uh-huh.
or in Ecuador.
Yeah.
So my loved ones were like, "Oh my God, I hope he gets home okay."
Yeah.
And I did, and then I landed in the UK. My friend was waiting for me at the airport, and as soon as I hugged my best friend, I was like, "This is real."
Uh, uh,
That kind of touch uh,
yeah.
grounded me. So luckily, my friends then took care of me. They had to take care of me for basically uh, a week or 10 days
Uh-huh.
because my mind was not working properly. I couldn't really understand books. Little things would trigger me into thinking it was a dream again. So my friends thought, what can we do to like make him feel this is familiar? Let's watch The Blues Brothers, one of his favorite films. But we watched this version where there was scenes, that weren't in the original version, an
Oh,
extended version. So I was
oh,
like, I've never seen this scene before. This is my mind's making this up. So there were
oh,
these constant
oh,
kind of things.
uh-huh.
And very luckily my friends are hippie mystic types.
Yeah.
So they did not freak out, even though I was in this altered state, and they supported me and gave me love, grounded me, uh, gave me food, kept me safe. Um, and then what happened was, and I also some kind of spiritual skills I'd had helped me a bit. I mean, I say spiritual skills, Emma, but like slow breathing, like saying to myself, this will pass, because there would be waves of severe anxiety
Yes.
and ontological uncertainty.
Sure.
And this book by Pema Chodron, The Places That Scare You, was
Yes.
basically the only book that I understood.
Uh,
Like I couldn't understand other books, but
mm,
that really helped me. Um, and then it passed. Like after about 10 days, it passed, and I think it was a temporary psychotic episode, but I didn't realize that until recently. Until recently, I thought this was just derealization, but someone said it's if you actually think you're in a dream and act on it, then it's psychosis.
mm,
And so the moment I upgraded to first class, it was technically according to psychiatrists, it was psychosis. So, but you know, I would say the funny thing is that you compare these two breakdown experiences, like the experience I had when I was 18, this bad trip. I didn't talk to anyone about that for years. I completely repressed it and it completely cut me off from other people.
Uh,
The shame, the trauma, the emotional repression, and it took me many years to get over that.
mm,
In this second experience, I had no choice but to tell my friends immediately,
mm,
and I had the good fortune that they cared for me for
yes.
10 days
Yeah.
and provided this safe, loving space. And in that experience, my heart all the way through felt totally open.
Mm,
So I was not in a psychotic state as in freaking out. I was just incapacitated for normal life. But my heart was extremely open. I was extremely sensitive. I could pick up people's thoughts, feelings. I was basically like a child.
mm,
You know, I was like in a I'd regressed to a child state, maybe even an infant state.
mm.
Um, my intellectual abilities were disabled. They tried to play Trivial Pursuit with me, and I didn't know what the capital of Poland was, and they're like, "Oh my God, Jules has lost his mind." But my heart was way more open
Uh,
than it had previously been because I'd been an emotionally repressed intellectual,
yes.
and this was like a kind of the opposite.
Mm,
Um, and then it passed, but it's possible that it did changed me emotionally, that experience of having to trust my friends in the most vulnerable state.
yes.
And maybe that enabled me to open up a bit and to be in serious relationships. I mean,
Uh,
so I got married last year, you know, at 47. And so that is, who knows how this all mix in, but like I believe that's been one of the challenges of my life is to
mm,
move from a traumatized person who was only safe in books and ideas to a person somewhat capable of having a relationship and of trusting others and those kinds of things. So, um, but since then, I have not really sought ecstatic experiences.
mm,
Um, my spiritual practice is being in a being married and being in a relationship and trying to be capable of that. And that's the challenge for me. Not self-transcendence, not mystical experiences, but like being with another person. That is the kind of when I have anxious attachment styles, basically. So now, that's it. It's the kind of quiet spirituality of domestic life, I would say, at which I am a beginner.
mm.
I'm a beginner at such things. Um, yeah. So that's where I've got to.
Thank you so much. You're very articulate about describing your story, Jules. And,
I got so into the flow of that I had no idea how long I talked for, but it seems like
well,
I've only talked for about 30 minutes, so it's okay.
yeah, it's totally okay and very informative for people who are going to be listening to this. So, you've covered just about everything that I would like to cover in these interviews. And just one thought, which I basically is a repetition of what I asked you before, but through especially the last psychedelic experience, when you did have support eventually and were safe eventually, great good fortune,
Yeah.
did it change your sense of purpose in life?
Yes. That experience in 2017 led to me being more and more interested in spiritual emergencies,
Mm,
um, and in psycho-spiritual crises, mystical psychosis,
yes.
this kind of thing. And that inspired me to organize an event on spiritual emergencies with various people speaking, including the best friend of mine who was waiting at the airport for me,
Mm,
a woman called Louisa Tomlinson, who's also had kind of spiritual emergencies, quasi-psychotic,
mm,
paranormal experiences and so forth. So she was really, the best person to help me with that.
yes, truly.
Um, and with a psychiatrist called Tim Reed, who's now set up the Institute for Psychedelic Therapy with the therapist who actually helped me for 3 years after that
Mm,
ayahuasca experience. So we held a seminar which is on YouTube if you want to look for it, and that led to the book Breaking Open, 12 people's accounts of their psycho-spiritual crises. And I suppose I became more and more interested in turbulent and messy ecstatic experiences,
mm,
and helping people with that, helping people understand that ecstatic experiences are not always love and light. They're not always like just a nice weekend and then you're healed. And like trying to improve our ecstatic literacy in Western culture, our
mm,
understanding of ecstatic experiences, because
mm,
we have a rather naive and simplistic and black and white understanding. Either we reject them and pathologize them, or we fetishize them.
mm.
And so I'm interested in accounts of people saying, yes, there's benefits and they can be extremely meaningful, but they can also be hard and challenging and dangerous.
Yes.
And that's why I set up, the NGO, the Challenging Psychedelic Experiences project, and I guess more and more the work I've done is looking at also the harms of it, that one can find in spirituality, cult-like harms, the risks of guruism, um, and just support for people dealing with um, particularly post-psychedelic difficulties.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I mean, like we did a big study of in 2023 of the first big study of post-psychedelic difficulties, and it came out the same day as this pilot in the US was arrested because he was on a plane in the cockpit as a passenger, and he thought he was in a dream 2 days after taking mushrooms, and he
Oh.
tried to crash the plane, and he was arrested and charged with 84 counts of attempted murder. And the psychedelic industry said this couldn't be anything connected to psychedelics because it was 2 days after the experience. And I knew from my personal experience it was possible because I'd been on a plane a week after an ayahuasca experience, thought I was in a dream, and in my case, just upgraded to first class.
Mm,
So I contacted his defense team. We shared our research. We said, look, here are all these examples of people thinking they're in a dream after psychedelics,
mm,
in a highly derealized or quasi-psychotic state. And our research helped get the attempted murder charges dropped against this pilot, this guy called Joseph Emerson.
uh,
And he's not in jail now. He's out of jail. So yeah, I want to. I know that there are people who are in kind of a hell states sometimes. Unfortunately, after psychedelics, there's lots of people who have awakening experiences, healing experiences, which I'm so happy about. But my little niche is to help people who feel in that kind of terror, anxiety kind of state, to help them with information, to help them find good support.
yes.
So that's what I've been doing the last kind of 4 years, basically.
Fabulous. Well, it fits exactly into what IMHU speaks about too, that most people who are going through these transformative experiences, if they get the right kind of support, which you did, loving, understanding support, support for your safety and good nutrition and likely sleep as well was encouraged, that they end up feeling like there's more integration of who they are, more possibilities, but especially a desire to be in service to others. And you are a fabulous example of that because of all the work you've been doing to help others who have challenging experiences after psychedelics, but also challenging experiences in that whole realm that can be brought on by spiritual meditation, for instance.
Yeah,
So I,
yeah, and and the say, and I've talked about the idea of spiritual emergency, and is it different to normal psychosis? Because a lot of people in psychotic experiences have spiritual beliefs in aspects and so on, and the same things work for both. I think, like keeping them safe, empathy, not judging them, like that there are practices that individuals can use to navigate highly altered quasi-psychotic states. And sometimes people are helped by medication as well. So like in a way, the same things are just good practice.
Yes. So I feel like I could personally go on talking with you for several hours, Jules, but because we're doing this interview really
Yeah.
for an audience of people who are wanting to know more about stories of spiritual awakening, I'm going to stop here and invite us to talk at another time. But I just want to thank you so much for telling your personal story in such a personal way. And I've learned a tremendous amount from it and really enjoyed connecting with you today. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
else you'd like to say as a final?
No, just if people, want to read my Substack, it's www.ecstaticintegration.org. If they people dealing with post-psychedelic difficulties, it's challenging psychedelic experiences.com.
Okay, so we will write that down so that people have that directly under the information under the video. And thank you again, Jules.
Thank you, Emma.
Oh, I'm